Have you ever wondered how much bigger your bank account would be if you could just work 2 or more jobs at the same time? Well, a few people at Equifax found out the hard way that dual wielding jobs is not as easy as dual wielding guns in Halo, having been fired in a project called Project Home Alone. To understand how this happened, we need to understand what Equifax is and does. For most people, Equifax is just one of 2 or 3 main companies in charge of creating and maintaining credit reports that are used by banks, car companies, certain employers, and so on. The common impression is that they do so by having access to banking and credit card information, but the rabbit hole actually goes deeper. Credit scores take into account multiple factors like payment history, as in whether you've been making your payments and whether they're on time, how much debt you have, which counterintuitively rewards you for simultaneously having access to a shitload of credit while also using as little of it as possible, how old your accounts are, which screws you over because they also want you to have many accounts, and opening new ones reduces the average account age, what kinds of accounts they are, as in credit loans versus car loans versus mortgage or mortgages if you're wealthy, and credit inquiries, which will reduce your credit score because you're trying to increase it by opening up more accounts for which the companies will request such inquiries. Great. Given all the information they need to collect just to figure out your credit score, this means that companies like Equifax will implicitly have business relationships with many banks and lenders to broker credit and banking data in both directions. Over time, if you're running such a company, that makes sense to offer services adjacent to credit scoring, like identity protection and fraud protection and so on. But there's also the business to business world. The obvious place to start is by offering services relating to credit scores. Businesses want to see the credit scores to make decisions. They want to know about all the financial risks they have to make by offering financing to prospective customers and account holders. Next to that, they can also sell the information as marketing data. They know how much you make and where you're spending your money, which is vital information for things like targeted advertising campaigns. And finally, already knowing where you spend your money, it's not a big leap to pursue information on where you get that money from. Equifax has also moved into the employment data space, offering services relating to employee onboarding, tax forms, and most relevantly, employee screening. And this is where Project Home Alone comes in. Equifax used its own product, the Work Number, to identify employees and contractors it suspected were using their remote status to work double duty for other companies. The Work Number contains employment records like weekly pay and work history for employees at 2.5 million companies across the country, according to Insider's review. What's going on here is sort of a twisted variation of a process known as dogfooding, where a company developing a product will use it internally for purposes of making sure it actually works. This is normally a good practice because it acts as real-world testing. It builds confidence internally in the product as any issues found get ironed out. Except in this case, the goal was to root out employees working multiple jobs. It is unclear whether Equifax was simply firing everybody who they could find that had multiple jobs, but it is being reported that the employees they did find were investigated further. In one instance, an employee admitted to additional full-time employment at another large company, noting that he also had a third job performing nursing work on the weekends, according to Equifax spokesperson Kate Walker. When the employee appeared on camera for his interview with Equifax, which was conducted during the employee's regular business hours, it was clear that he was sitting in a medical center environment. Medical professionals wearing scrubs walked in and out of the room behind the employee during the video call. This is where we have to look not just at the productivity aspect of having a job, but availability. If someone is working 2 jobs from home with 2 separate laptops, it's not inconceivable that they can pull it off and be responsive at both jobs. Think about it. You have 2 laptops right next to each other with the chat windows open. You can respond almost in real time to both. The point is, part of professionalism is not leaving other parties hanging. But speaking of laptops, another example of bad conduct was reported. Walker also told Insider by email that Equifax terminated an employee for holding 3 jobs at once. That employee had one part-time position that Equifax knew about, but another that he didn't disclose and actually did from from the Equifax office. Walker wrote that the employee's full-time position conflicted with their work at Equifax. Ultimately, they were terminated for bringing the other company's laptop into the Equifax offices and performing work for that organization from an Equifax office. One of the key things that everybody should know about in working in the 21st century with all of our work provided phones and computers is that the reason they are provided to us is not just to provide the tools required to do the job, but to also make sure that work stuff only happens on work devices, sort of a separation between work stuff and personal stuff. And when you add in a second job to the mix, you definitely don't want to mix the two. It's impossible to defend the employee bringing in and doing work on another job's laptop in the Equifax office. I don't think any employer would want that or tolerate it. In a world where we're seeing high inflation, in a world where rent and mortgages are sky high, it should come as no surprise to anybody that many people, capable or otherwise, would attempt to manage multiple full-time jobs simultaneously. I don't think there should be a zero tolerance policy when it comes to an employee's overall income structure, as in having multiple jobs at the same time. As someone who believes in meritocracy, I think it's completely within reason for someone who can deliver on expectations multiple times over at work for multiple employers at the same time to be compensated appropriately. On the same basis, it's not okay for somebody who is already overwhelmed at their current position to take on an additional paycheck without being able to deliver on it. In the case of Equifax, it is clear that they were able to let go of at least some of the 24 fired people for breaching basic workplace policies, and others for blatantly not being in an environment where they could argue being able to get their work done in a focused manner. What's not clear is if there were any among them who were actually delivering on what was expected while also juggling one or two more jobs at the same time. I hope not. And currently there's nothing suggesting otherwise. I also need to mention that if there were any folks who were working for competitors at the same time, getting fired would be absolutely fair game, but I couldn't find any information suggesting that happened in any capacity. Employers want to get the most out of their employees, and the good ones will do so within the standard 8 hours of the workday without causing unnecessary drama and stress. When an employee is delivering on all fronts, why should their income be capped by their single employer paycheck? The solution I propose is to work with the employee to either fill multiple roles and get compensated appropriately. Multiple hats equals multiple jobs equals, that much bigger of a paycheck, or accept that they want to turn their excess untapped potential into extra money at other employers. As long as they're doing their job, it's all fair game. Again, this would only be for those capable of delivering. I am absolutely not advocating someone doing the bare minimum at 3 different jobs at the same time just to not get fired but still get their paycheck. At the end of the day, any employee doing their job and not violating any security, building, or competitive policy should be left to their duties and not get disciplined for wanting more, taking action, and doing so in a way that doesn't conflict with their job's responsibilities. That's all I've got for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and until next time, work as many jobs as you want that you can handle.